by popular demand, a cutout tutorial. Now before I get into the specifics of this, I just would like to mention Slings of Web and Boog Nice and any other ACBA artists that help pioneer the foundation for cutouts. This is an integral part of ACBA. It's what separates it from toy photography and the thousands of other groups on Facebook and YouTube. And without the OGs, to show us how to do it, we wouldn't have reached this point. So just a quick thank you to those guys. Now, the method that I've used and kind of finagled my way through can be used for all kinds of things, which is why I have this set up here. Of course, you're going to need speech bubbles for pretty much any kind of scene. You can always use a speech bubble, whether it's just dialogue or a sound effect or anything. Now, the second most common type would be, these effect cutouts, like sound effects or like electrical effects, anything like that. And you can go as little as you want, where it's just one sentence, or you can take up, a whole shot with one effect. You can also, stretch this and do full figure cutouts. You can have background characters. You could have characters that haven't been made yet by toy industries. As long as you know what you're doing with this, you can pretty much do anything and have it be good quality. Even like little comic books, newspapers. These will be very good for props, or if you're doing certain scenes. Like I have an alleyway where I have like beat up newspapers littering the street. You can use this method for that. Okay, so basically, to break this down before I show you, all this is going to be done digitally, meaning we're not going to be cutting directly out of comics, we're not going to be photocopying anything, unless you have a comic you want to photocopy or scan it and then take it from there. But basically, this is using digital comics or images off of Google and the internet. And we're going to be cropping out what we want, these different effects or characters, and copying and pasting into a Word document, resizing it. That's very important. Resize it to the right size so that when it comes out, it will be in scale with your characters. And then I'll show you guys how to cut them out too, and how to go around the edges with certain kinds of markers and what kind of effects you can get with that, because that is actually very important and it makes it pop. Not only just to kind of solidify like the cutout by doing the edge of it, but also like let's say you kind of get it at an angle in your shot, going around the edge will make it so that people don't see that kind of lip of the paper. It'll still look like a cutout once you have that two-dimensionality of the picture. Also, this is not standard printer paper. You can't just go into your room, grab some printer paper, do this out. You could, and that would totally work, but they'd be a little bit harder to cut, it'd be much flimsier, and they wouldn't be as vibrant. This right here is all cardstock, just white, regular cardstock. And the reason I use this is because it's about 2 or 3 times sturdier than standard paper. It's not going to crimple on you when you're trying to cut it or stick it to something. It's not going to be see-through if you shoot it with lights. And it's still thin enough where it can read as paper. But keep that in mind, cardstock, not printer paper. But you could use printer paper if you're struggling to find cardstock or just don't have money for it. Alright, well, let's jump over to the computer. Okay, so since we're looking for digital speech bubbles so we don't have to photocopy or cut up comics or anything, my main tool I use is just Google Images. I mean, you got the world of comics at your fingertips here. So a little tip to find pages where you can use the speech bubbles and effects and stuff is think of a series you want, like Captain America, Spider-Man, stuff like that. Type in the name of the series and an issue number around what you're trying to go for. So just as an example here, I've typed in X-Force or Uncanny X-Force 21, and you can see already the first couple pages or first couple results are comic pages from that issue. Boom, there you go. You got, at least 15 different cutouts right here. So what you're going to do is, because we don't want small sizes for this, we want big files for clearer and crisper cutouts. We're going to go over here and click search by image, then all sizes for the image, and then just pick the biggest one. I don't really have a recommendation for how big of a file, just as big as you can get it, because you're going to be cropping out these bubbles here, so this may be 1000 by 600, but once you actually cut this bubble out, this piece is only going to be what, like 100 by 100. So you want this file to be as big as possible because it's going to make it clearer and crisper and more vibrant. So once you got the pages and cutouts you want, you basically just save the file, crop out what you need, copy paste it, throw it in a Word document. So I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. Okay, so here's how your page layout should look more or less once you got all your cutouts formatted to the right size. Now the trickiest part of this is just getting the speech bubbles to be the right size, because I found that no matter how much you play with it, you don't know how big they're going to be when they actually print out until you do it. So what I like to do to kind of work with this problem is I'll do a test sheet and then I'll pick out the ones that I think are the best, so when I go back to touch everything up, I'll resize all the cutouts around the one that I thought was about the right size. I'll also do duplicates, which you can see in here, one's bigger, one's smaller, just to see which one comes out, a little bit better. But yeah, this is all just done in Microsoft Word. So, pretty much anybody has access to this. Even if you're on a Mac like me, you can get the program pretty easily. And fairly simple. Just, copy, paste, drag, drop, resize it, bing, bang, boom. Another thing I like to do is messing with the borders of the file. It's those little blue tabs up there, and it just gives you a little bit more space to cram some more stuff in. Now don't take it all the way to the edge, because when you print them out, it's actually going to cut off whatever's on the edge. I've done it a couple times. But so this is what you want it to look like before printing. Get as much as you can, different sizes, make sure it's about where you want it to be. And the next step is print them out. So let's get to it. Okay, so we got our cutouts all printed out. Here's what it would look like on cardstock. Very similar to our layout. Now, if you don't have a nice printer like me, I have a total crap printer. I go to either Staples or Kinko's to actually have mine printed out. So again, if you can't find cardstock, that's a very easy solution. Just take your Word document, put it on a flash drive, go to Staples or Kinko's, tell them you want it printed on white cardstock in color, and it should come out looking like this. It's typically about 90 cents per page. That can vary. So just keep in mind, like if you have about 5 pages of cutouts you want to do, it'll run you about $5. Okay, so this, like I said, a little bit sturdier than paper, a lot more vibrant, the color sticks to it better. So what you're going to be using, well, you don't have to do this, but this is what I do. I use a big pair of scissors just to cut everything out and get it separated. And then my main thing I use is a little pair of scissors with a sharper point, sharper edge. Now this is primarily what I'm going to be cutting with here. And then lastly, some fine details or straight edges, you know, get a little X-Acto knife or box cutter. This is just a little 99-cent store thin box cutter, snappable edges if you wear it out. Works pretty good. Alright, well, let's get cutting. Okay, so now that we got all of the cutouts separated, I like to go through and make sure, you know, I grab the best ones I'm going to cut. Like here I got a little pile of ones that came out way too small. Some of them, I mean, they're passable, but realistically they're just not going to work great for shots unless it's a super close-up of a character. So a way you can test this is just taking a figure and, you know, holding the bubble next to it and seeing how big it is. So like I said, you know, this one's not so bad, but it's just not going to work for the majority of my shots. So I'm just going to put it in this little pile over here. Might trash it, might give it away, I don't know. Okay, so cutting. Just take, you know, whichever cutout you want to do first and get to it. I like to use scissors a lot of the time. I find it's just easier and works best for my cutting method. However you think you can get this out as smooth as possible, just go for it. So I like to stick close to the edge of the cutout, the black line. I know Slings the Web put up a tutorial on Facebook where he shows if you have a hard time cutting very precisely like this, you can take a black marker and draw around the outline of a cutout to make it thicker, and then attempt to cut within that black line and just make it look as even as possible. So that's an option if you know you're having a hard time or you have bad eyesight or something. But for what I do, you know, I like to just keep things smooth and even. So here I'm just cutting out the general shape, and after I get it out, I'm gonna touch it up. Make sure, you know, there's no weird bumps or I didn't accidentally cut too much of one part. So let's see. Another thing, if you're doing a lot of cutouts like this, make sure you have a little trash pile, otherwise you're going to start having a lot of crap all over your workspace. Especially like when you go to just make sure the edges are smooth, you're going to get a lot of thin shavings. So just make sure you kind of keep that in a controlled area. Alright, so here's how it's looking so far. And not too bad, but there are some mistakes around the edge. So what I do is I flip it around, because when you're looking at this white, like almost negative space, it's easier to see the shape of it. You don't get distracted by the letters or the black outline, so you can see how you need to make it smooth. So I wouldn't have seen these bumps and lumps around here if I hadn't have flipped it over. So we just smooth this out. And it's okay to, you know, flip back and forth just to double check what you're doing. Hopefully I'm in focus and in frame for the shot, still figuring things out. But this can take, you know, once you get the hang of it, it'll go by pretty fast. Sometimes it can take a while depending on how intricate a cutout is or if you don't get it, quite smooth on the first shot. So like this is my first cutout of the day, so this one's gonna probably take the longest. But once you've been doing them, for a couple minutes or a couple hours, then you can really just start cranking them out, because you'll get the rhythm of your hand motions, and you'll know how much you need to take off and what part needs to be fixed. So it's like anything, consider this a warm-up. If you're not sure, that you're going to do a good job, take one of the junk cutouts and practice on that first. That way you don't have to risk, the good ones that came out. Like I said in my last video, sometimes the hardest way is not always the right way. Do anything and everything possible to make this as easy for you as you can. Remember to have fun with it, That's what we're here for. Fun and enjoying a hobby together. So I just about got this. I'm sure there's still a little bit more mistakes in here, but it looks decent. I mean, we can use this. Okay. So, moving along. You're going to need a scrap piece of paper or something to draw on. Well, you're not really going to be drawing, but you need something to absorb ink. So here's just a little note card I grabbed. And what we're going to do is trace around the edge of this with black, just to make it pop. Make sure when you take a picture, it doesn't look jagged on the edges with white and black. And when you take it from the side, you won't see this white rim. It'll all be black, and it'll just look nice, like it came straight out of a book. So another reason I like to use cardstock, aside from the reasons I constantly keep repeating, is it absorbs ink very well. Now, if you do it too heavy, it still will bleed like paper. But if you do it pretty quick and evenly, then there won't be any excess bleed, and it'll come out really clean. So I like to use a Sharpie. I mean, they're cheap, they're everywhere. Now don't use this edge, the common felt tip point. It may say, fine point, whatever. This is not a fine point. This is a marker. This will ruin it. You want this, the ultra fine point. The little pen tip here. Okay. Now once again, being a Sharpie, this may bleed. Even this little tip will bleed, so you need to be careful with it. Alright, so basically what I like to do is I start with the outside so I can see just what I need to do. So get the marker going a little bit, then just gently press around the edges. Don't try to hold it up and do it in your hand, because it's going to be much harder and there's more likely going to bleed. Do it on the paper. Make sure it's a paper you don't mind throwing away, because you're just going to get all these black marks on it. Now most people who attempt to do this with the marker would say, okay, I did it, good to go. However, if you actually look around the edge, there's still going to be some white specks that you missed. So what you do here is you flip it over and go over it the same way from the back. And what this will do is it'll bleed on the parts you did not get from behind. This also, to an extent, this will cover up any mistakes you made, like cutting wise, but don't heavily rely on this to cover up your mistakes. Make sure you get it as smooth as possible when you cut it. Okay, so let's see how good this came out. From what I can tell, this one's good to go. Got black all around the rim. Looks pretty clean from the front. Of course the back's going to look a little jacked up, but I mean, no one's going to be looking at the back of this. So once again, you know, just do your character test. Make sure you got somebody here. Hold it up. Alright, looks about good size. So there you go. Boom. You got a speech bubble cutout. Now, that was just like a simple cutout. They can get a lot more intricate, like double bubble cutout. Like here, we got one from Judge Dredd. Now what you're going to do is just the same thing. You just go around it, make sure you're going smooth. You know, if you can't cut it in one take, you know, cut up to a point you can get to, turn it, and then start cutting the other direction and meet yourself in the middle. Just take your time with it, be patient. Now for straight edges, I've already cut these out. You can use, like I said, a blade and a ruler, or if you're pretty confident in your skills, you can just cut it with the scissors. And these are pretty simple. I mean, you know, just 4 cuts, you're done. But disclaimer here, be careful. I mean, I'm assuming most of you are of the age where you know how to use these utensils, but if you don't, you know, make sure you get some help from a family member or friend who knows what they're doing. Always watch your fingers, even if you are an adult and experienced. There have been several times I've almost cut my finger off, gone about halfway through just because you're not looking at what you're doing. Always be careful. So these, even something like this, a little ACBA calendar, you would cut it out and think, okay, good to go. But sometimes I like to go around these with the marker as well, and just to see if it'll make a difference, because most time it does, even if it's subtle. It's the subtle differences that set you apart from the rest of the group. If anybody's seen the movie Waiting, there's a joke in there. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra. So, here we go. Yep, black line's making it pop already, looking good. And another thing is, doesn't always have to be black. The majority of the time you're going to be using black because the edging is already going to be black. But let's say you have an Iron Man cutout, like right here. Most Iron Man cutouts are going to be red and white. And what you do then is the same thing. You just cut it out, and instead of a red or a black marker, you're going to be using a red marker. And the same exact thing, you know, same process. But just a warning, sometimes different colors of Sharpies will bleed more or less. I'm not really sure why that is. It might be the pigmentation. But I found that blue and red Sharpies bleed more than the black one. So just make sure you don't press too hard or sit too long on one spot. Just, you know, go over what you need to go over and get it done. Alright, so that's the tutorial. I'm not going to bore you guys sitting here, you know, cutting all these cutouts. I'll leave it to you guys to do all the grinding work. Keep grinding, keep it crispy, and I'll catch you guys later.